The church bells rang in a hollow echo that seemed to reverberate deep within Claire's chest, as if mocking the life she had once thought she was building. The crowd gathered before her blurred into a haze of faces, all of them looking at her, expecting something, anything, but not this. The man she loved stood at the altar, his back turned to her, as he whispered vows to a woman Claire didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted with the realization. This is the woman he's chosen. Claire's breath hitched, her hand trembling as it gripped the delicate fabric of her wedding dress. How could this happen? How could I be so blind? The familiar warmth of love she once had for Liam turned into something bitter and cold. She could feel her knees buckling, but she held herself upright, biting back the urge to scream. "This is a mistake," she whispered to herself, but even as the words left her lips, she knew it was too late. He had made his choice. She wasn't part of it. Claire walked away from the church, each step heavier than the last. The cool air stung her face, but it didn't numb the hurt. How could he do this to me? She thought over and over again, as if repeating the question would bring some kind of answer. Her footsteps echoed in the empty street, the sound too loud in the silence of her mind. The city around her felt foreign now, as if it had transformed overnight into a place she didn't recognize. She had been so sure of her future, of her place beside Liam. Now everything she had believed in felt like a lie. Her thoughts kept circling back to him, to the life they had planned, the promises he had made. But none of it mattered now. He's with her now. He's chosen her, Claire thought bitterly. She stopped in the middle of the street, the cars passing by unnoticed. A strange feeling of numbness settled over her. She didn't know where to go, what to do, or how to fix this. What now? The question lingered, but the answer was still elusive. In the days that followed, Claire kept to herself. She avoided calling anyone, didn't answer messages. There were too many questions, too many things she couldn't face. At night, she lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the room deafening. She thought about Liam, about the love they had shared, the life they had planned. But now, all of that seemed like a cruel joke. The betrayal cut deeper than she had anticipated, like a wound that refused to heal. The house felt empty without him, but it felt worse with the memories of what they had shared. Claire had never felt more alone. Every room she entered seemed to remind her of him, of the promises they'd made that now lay broken. Why didn't I see it? She thought, her mind replaying every moment, every word. It was as though the truth had always been there, hidden in plain sight. But she had been blind, too trusting. She couldn't figure out how to move on. The weight of the world pressed down on her, and she didn't know where to start. The days dragged on, but Claire's mind remained consumed by the thought of Liam. She couldn't escape it. She tried to push the thoughts away, to immerse herself in anything that might help her forget, but nothing worked. Everywhere she went, his face haunted her. She couldn't believe it. How could he move on so easily? She asked herself, her voice barely a whisper. The pain seemed to double every time she thought of their last moments together. The finality of it all had left her speechless, numb. Her heart ached, and yet a strange sense of anger began to grow within her. Anger toward him for what he had done. Anger toward herself for being so naive. He never really loved me, she realized one evening, staring at her reflection in the mirror. He couldn't have. And yet, despite the anger, despite the bitterness, she knew she wasn't ready to walk away completely. Maybe that's what makes this so hard, she thought. I still love him, even after everything. By the end of the week, Claire found herself standing outside her old apartment, staring up at the building she had once called home. It felt strange to be here, as though the place had become a symbol of everything she had lost. She wanted to go in, wanted to find some sense of closure, but she couldn't bring herself to. The thought of seeing him, of facing the life they had built together, made her heart race in a way she wasn't sure she could handle. Instead, she stood there, the weight of her own indecision holding her in place. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I can't stay here anymore, she realized. And with that, the decision was made. She would leave. But where would she go? The answer wasn't clear, but it was the only choice she had left. Slowly Claire turned and walked away from the apartment, not sure of what was to come but certain that she couldn't stay in the place that had once been filled with memories of love and promises. She had to move on, even if she didn't know how. Claire spent the next few weeks in a small town far from the life she had once known. The quiet here was a stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed her. The air smelled of pine and fresh rain, the kind of earthy scent that promised renewal. Yet, no matter how much she tried to embrace the simplicity of her new life, the pain of her past lingered. Every corner she turned seemed to remind her of the life she had left behind. She thought about Liam often, and the strange pull that still lingered between them, like an invisible thread, tying her heart to his. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered to herself, staring out over the distant hills as dusk painted the sky in hues of violet and gold. But even as she tried to move forward, her mind kept returning to the same question: what now? The baby growing inside her was a constant reminder that she could never fully escape what had happened. And with that realization came a surge of resolve. I need to take control. One afternoon, as Claire wandered through the local market, she was approached by a stranger, a woman with dark, expressive eyes and a gentle smile. "You're new here," she remarked, her tone light but curious. Claire nodded stiffly, not quite ready to open up to anyone. But there was something about the woman that made her pause. "I know what you're going through," the woman continued, her voice filled with an unexpected warmth. "I've been where you are. It feels like everything you thought you knew has been turned upside down, doesn't it?" Claire's chest tightened. How could this stranger possibly understand? But as the woman spoke, a sense of comfort washed over her. She didn't have all the answers, but maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. "You're not alone," the woman said softly. "You're never really alone, even when it feels like it." Claire managed a small, uncertain smile. She didn't know what this new connection would mean, but it felt like a lifeline. Claire's heart was in turmoil as she walked home that evening. The stranger's words echoed in her mind, but it was the feeling of being seen, truly seen, that stuck with her. The baby inside her seemed to stir in response, as if sensing her unease. "I never asked for any of this," she thought, but even as the words crossed her mind, she realized that wasn't entirely true. She had never asked for the pain, but she had always wanted to be seen, to be loved. Her eyes wandered to the distant horizon again, where the hills met the sky, endless and full of possibility. "Maybe it's time to stop running," she told herself. She had no idea what her future looked like, but she couldn't continue living in this limbo of unresolved emotions. She needed to make a decision, to choose to move forward, even if the choice was painful. As she approached her small cottage, a sense of resolve filled her chest. Whatever happened, she would face it head-on, for herself and for the child that was now a part of her. The following morning, Claire decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She had spent too many days cooped up inside, consumed by her thoughts. The forest surrounding her town was quiet, save for the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. Claire inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the earthy scent of pine. There was a stillness here, a serenity that she hadn't felt in ages. As she walked deeper into the woods, she came across a small clearing, bathed in sunlight. It was the perfect place for reflection. Sitting on a large rock, Claire closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of peace. For the first time since leaving the city, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can be strong enough," she thought, rubbing her belly gently. The baby kicked, as if in agreement. For a brief moment, everything felt right. But even in this moment of peace, the question of Liam still loomed over her. "Do I confront him?" she wondered. "Do I even want to?" A few days later, Claire received a letter from Liam. She had debated for hours whether she should open it, but in the end, her curiosity won out. She tore open the envelope with shaky hands and began to read. His words were full of regret, apologies, and promises of a future they could have together. He spoke of the pack, of the responsibility she now carried, and the hope that they could rebuild what they had lost. I never meant to hurt you, the letter began. You are the only one I've ever truly loved. Claire's heart pounded in her chest as she read the words, a mixture of anger and longing bubbling up within her. How could he do this to her? How could he say those words now, when it was too late? Yet, even as her heart screamed in protest, a small part of her still wanted to believe him. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered to herself, but the weight of the letter in her hands told her she wasn't ready to give up just yet. Claire sat by the window of her small cottage, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sun was just beginning to dip behind the trees. The letter from Liam weighed heavily in her hands. She hadn't been able to bring herself to reply, to confront him. Yet the more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she had lost. How much they had lost. It's not just about us anymore, she thought, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. The baby, growing more active with each passing day, was a constant reminder of everything that had been ripped away from her. The betrayal, the lies, the man who had promised to be her rock, but had become a stranger in the blink of an eye. Her mind reeled with the possibilities. What did he want from her now? Was this just another attempt to manipulate her, to reel her back into his web? Or did he truly want to make amends? Claire didn't know if she was ready to trust him again, but one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same again. As the days passed, Claire felt the tension inside her grow. She couldn't escape the thoughts of Liam, even as she tried to focus on the simple tasks of her daily life. Each time she went into town, she caught glimpses of couples, families, all seemingly so sure of their place in the world, and it made her feel small. Was it her fault? Had she somehow pushed him away? No, she told herself. He made the choice. But still, the questions lingered. Why hadn't he told her about the pack? Why hadn't he trusted her? There were so many things she didn't understand, and as much as she tried to ignore them, they continued to gnaw at her. She wanted to forget him, to move on, but the baby inside her made that impossible. She couldn't walk away from that. But more than that, she couldn't walk away from the truth. I need answers, she whispered to herself, the realization settling in like a heavy stone in her chest. She couldn't keep running. She had to face him, face everything. It's time, she thought, her resolve hardening. The next day, Claire stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the path that led to the pack's territory. She had walked this road 100 times before, but now, with the weight of her decision pressing on her, it felt different. Every step forward felt like an admission of defeat. Yet, in her heart, she knew it was the only way to stop the constant ache in her chest. She needed answers. She needed to understand why Liam had kept this secret from her, and what it meant for her future. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she thought about the confrontation that awaited her. Would he admit the truth? Would he try to explain? Or would he deny it all, like he had done before? As she took the first step forward, the wind picked up, the trees whispering around her, and the sound of birds in the distance seemed to fade into silence. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. I have to do this, Claire said softly, the words echoing in the stillness around her. As Claire stepped into the pack's territory, a sense of foreboding settled over her. The air was thick with tension, and the forest felt oppressive, as though the very trees were watching her every move. She had been here once before, when everything had seemed right, when Liam had been everything to her. But now the land seemed foreign, dangerous. She walked with purpose, her heart racing with every step. The deeper she went, the more she could feel the presence of the pack, their eyes on her, their silent judgment. Finally she reached the clearing where Liam had once promised her forever. He was standing there waiting, as though he had known she would come. His expression was unreadable, his eyes locked onto hers with a mixture of guilt and something else, something she couldn't quite place. As she took a step toward him, he spoke, his voice low and cautious. I never wanted it to be like this, Claire, he said, his words heavy with regret. But as his eyes met hers, Claire could see the truth there, and it hurt more than she had ever expected. You left me with nothing but questions. Claire's voice cracked as she spoke, the pain she had buried for so long finally surfacing. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me with the truth? Liam's face softened, his guilt palpable. He stepped closer, but Claire held up her hand, stopping him. Don't you dare come closer. I don't know who you are anymore, Liam. The man I loved, he wouldn't have done this to me. Liam stood frozen, his eyes pleading. Claire, I thought I was protecting you. The pack. They're dangerous. They'd have never let you in. I didn't want you to get hurt. His voice was full of desperation, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. And now? She asked, her tone harsh. Now that I'm pregnant with your child, what do you expect from me? Do you think I'll just forget everything? Liam's eyes flickered with emotion, but he didn't answer. Claire felt the walls she had built around her heart growing thicker, more impenetrable. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, she thought. She didn't know if she ever wanted to. Claire stood in the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest as Liam's words echoed in her mind. I was protecting you. The words seemed hollow now, no matter how much he tried to make them sound like truth. She stared at him, unable to speak for a moment. His guilt was palpable, but that didn't change the past. It didn't undo the months of betrayal, the lies that had wrapped around their love like a constricting vine. She felt a cold shiver run down her spine as the reality of the situation crashed over her. The baby inside her kicked, as if sensing the tension between them. What now? Claire asked softly, her voice barely audible. She didn't know what she wanted to hear from him. Did she want an apology? Did she want him to tell her it was all going to be okay? What could he possibly say that would make it right? She swallowed hard. I don't think I can ever trust you again. Her words hung in the air, thick with finality. The silence between them stretched on until Liam spoke again, his voice low but urgent. Claire, you need to understand, this wasn't just about you and me. It's bigger than that. The pack. They want to control everything. They'll use the baby. They'll use you. Claire's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the baby. What do you mean? She asked, her voice rising with a mixture of fear and confusion. Liam's expression darkened. They see your child as an asset, something to claim, and they'll stop at nothing to ensure that happens. Claire felt the ground shift beneath her. The world that had already been turned upside down by betrayal was now crumbling further. She couldn't breathe. How could you not have told me this before? She whispered, the hurt in her voice undeniable. I never wanted this for you, Liam said, his voice thick with regret. But Claire wasn't sure she could believe him anymore. Claire stepped back, her head spinning. She could feel the blood rushing in her ears, the tightness in her chest as she processed what Liam had just revealed. You should have told me this sooner, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Liam's eyes were filled with pain, but Claire couldn't bring herself to care. Not now. Not when everything had already fallen apart. Why didn't you trust me? She asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. I was trying to protect you, Liam answered, his voice strained. But Claire shook her head, unwilling to accept his justification. Protection? She echoed bitterly. You left me in the dark, Liam. You lied to me. And now I'm supposed to trust you again? She felt the weight of the baby inside her, the reality of their connection, but it didn't make the hurt go away. If anything, it made it worse. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered, the question hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Just as Claire was about to speak again, a noise from the woods broke their tension. A low growl, barely perceptible, but enough to send a chill down her spine. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she turned her head, scanning the darkening forest. Liam's expression shifted instantly, his eyes narrowing in alertness. Get behind me, he said urgently, stepping forward to shield her. But Claire wasn't sure who she was more afraid of, the pack or Liam himself. Another growl echoed, this time louder, closer. Claire could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as the air around them grew thick with tension. Liam, what's going on? She asked, her voice sharp with fear. But Liam didn't answer. Instead, he shifted slightly, his body stiff with tension, and Claire realized too late that the danger was closer than she'd ever imagined. The shadows around them seemed to deepen, the growls now joined by the sounds of rustling, as if the entire forest was alive with hostility. Without warning, the trees around them exploded in motion, figures darting out of the shadows. Claire's heart raced as she realized they were surrounded. Dark, menacing figures emerged from the forest, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The pack. She could feel the weight of their presence, the sense that they were not here to negotiate, but to claim. Liam moved swiftly, positioning himself between Claire and the advancing figures. "Stay behind me," he ordered again, his voice hard and commanding. Claire could barely process the danger around her. What do they want? She thought, her chest tightening with panic. Liam's gaze met hers briefly, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. "They've come for you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Claire's mind raced. "They want me?" She looked at Liam, but before she could speak, one of the figures lunged forward. The pack encircled them, their movements fluid and predatory. Claire's heart pounded in her chest as the realization hit her. The danger was no longer just a distant threat, it was here. Liam stepped forward, his voice steady, but tinged with an edge of desperation. "You don't have to do this," he said, his tone commanding, yet pleading. The pack leader, a tall man with silver eyes that seemed to glow in the twilight, stepped forward. "She's ours now," he said, his voice low and threatening, a cruel smile curving his lips. Claire's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean, ours?" she thought, panic rising in her chest. The leader's eyes flickered toward Liam, and for a moment Claire thought she saw something like regret in his gaze, but it was gone before she could process it. Liam turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. "You don't have to be afraid. I'll protect you," he said, his voice softer now, but Claire wasn't so sure. The pack was closing in. There was no way out, no place to run. Claire's thoughts raced as the pack closed in, the air heavy with the scent of danger. How did I end up here? She had never wanted this, never asked to be thrust into a world of darkness and betrayal. And now, she was being hunted, not just by the pack, but by the lies she had allowed herself to believe. Pack leader's gaze never left her, and she could feel the weight of his eyes on her, as if he could see right through her. "You can't hide from your destiny," he said, his voice cold and calculating. Liam stepped forward again, this time more forcefully. "Leave her alone," he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. But the leader only laughed, a low menacing sound that sent a shiver down Claire's spine. "You can't protect her forever, Liam," he taunted, his eyes flickering to the baby inside Claire. "She belongs to us now." Claire's heart lurched at the words, and for a moment she thought she might faint. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her child, the heir to a power she barely understood. Claire's mind whirled, the danger and betrayal crashing down on her like a tidal wave. The words of the pack leader rang in her ears. "She belongs to us now." She had known deep down that her connection to Liam went beyond love. There was something else, something she hadn't wanted to face. The pack, the power, the heir, it was all too much. Her heart raced as she looked at Liam, his face hard with resolve, but his eyes filled with a sorrow she couldn't quite understand. "Liam," she whispered, her voice breaking, "what is this? What does all of this mean?" He turned to her, his eyes softening with a mixture of guilt and longing. "It's not just about us," he said, his voice heavy. "It's about your future and the future of our child. The pack wants control, Claire, but I won't let them take you." His words, though comforting, only served to deepen her confusion. "How can I trust you?" she wanted to scream, but instead she stayed silent, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had to make. The pack closed in, their eyes hungry for the power they believed was rightfully theirs. Suddenly, the air seemed to crackle with energy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Without warning, the pack surged forward, their movements swift and predatory. Liam moved to intercept them, his body a shield between Claire and the advancing pack. "Get back," he shouted, his voice full of authority. Claire's heart raced as she watched the scene unfold in front of her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about survival. The pack wasn't going to back down. She could see the hunger in their eyes, the lust for power. She couldn't let them take what was hers. Not the baby, not her future. As the pack closed in, Claire felt a surge of something within her, something powerful, something primal. She wasn't just a bystander in this fight. She was a part of it. She had always been a part of it. "No!" she shouted, stepping forward, her voice filled with newfound strength. "You will not take my child." Her voice rang through the clearing, the air thick with the energy of her declaration. In the next moment, everything changed. There was a flash of light, a burst of energy that sent the pack stumbling backward. Claire felt a surge of power within her, a force she hadn't known she possessed. The pack leader's eyes widened in shock, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. "What is this?" he growled, stepping back, a mix of fear and anger in his eyes. But Claire didn't answer. She was too focused on the energy coursing through her veins. It was as if the power of the pack, the very essence of the forest, had awakened inside her. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting her child. Her baby was her future, and no one, not even the pack, could take that away from her. "This is my fight now," Claire said, her voice steady and filled with a newfound authority. "And I won't let you win." Liam stood beside her, his eyes filled with awe and pride. For the first time, Claire felt truly powerful, ready to face whatever came next. The energy in the air slowly began to settle, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Claire stood tall, her hands still humming with the power she had just unleashed. The pack leader, once so confident, now took a step back, his face twisted in disbelief. His packmates looked to him for guidance, but even they seemed unsure of what had just happened. Liam stood beside her, his expression one of awe and cautious optimism. What are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Claire didn't answer him immediately. She was still processing the overwhelming surge of energy that had come from within her. The power that had surged through her felt like a lifetime of force, as if the earth itself had aligned to protect her child. It felt right, but also foreign. She turned her gaze to Liam, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "I'm who I was meant to be," she said, her voice firm but calm. "And I'm not backing down." The pack leader finally spoke, his voice laced with venom. "You may have won this battle, but the war isn't over." Claire faced him, her eyes unwavering. "It is for me." The pack leader's retreating figure became a blur in the distance as he and his pack retreated into the shadows. Claire felt the weight of their gaze leave her, but the relief she expected never came. Instead, a deep sense of responsibility settled over her like a heavy cloak. "Is this really over?" she wondered. Liam watched her, his eyes intense but filled with concern. He reached out, placing a hand on her arm, grounding her. "Claire, you did it. You've protected us." His voice was filled with admiration, but Claire didn't feel the victory. "Not yet." "But at what cost?" she whispered. The reality of her new role, the power, the pack, the child growing inside her, felt so much heavier now. "This power, what does it mean for me, for us?" she thought. Liam squeezed her arm gently, pulling her from her thoughts. "We'll face whatever comes together," he assured her, though Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the peace she sought was still far off. As the sun began to rise, casting golden rays across the forest, Claire and Liam made their way back to the small cottage. The journey back felt different now. She wasn't just a woman who had been betrayed. She wasn't just a pawn in a world she didn't understand. She was a mother, a protector, and though the path ahead was uncertain, she finally understood that it was hers to walk. As they approached the cottage, Claire's thoughts shifted to the future. What will it be like raising a child in this world, she wondered. The world she had been thrust into wasn't one of peaceful existence. It was a world full of danger, of power struggles and secrets. But for the first time, Claire felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Liam, and she had the power to protect what mattered. They reached the door to the cottage, and Liam stopped for a moment, turning to her. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we'll face it together." Claire nodded, feeling a small sense of peace settle within her. Together. Inside the cottage, Claire sat by the window, her hand resting gently on her growing belly. The world outside was calm, but her mind was racing. The events of the past few days had left her with more questions than answers. The power she had discovered, the pack's intentions, the danger that still loomed. All of it weighed on her heavily. But as she sat there, her thoughts turned to the life she was about to bring into the world. She hadn't asked for any of this, but now she had no choice but to face it. She couldn't change the world she'd found herself in, but she could choose how to navigate it. "I will protect my child," she promised herself. The door creaked open, and Liam stepped inside, his face softening as he saw her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Claire turned to him and smiled faintly. "I will be," she replied, her tone filled with quiet determination. "I will be." As the days passed, Claire slowly began to rebuild her life. The world she had once known seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a new reality. The love she had once shared with Liam had transformed, grown stronger, but also more complicated. She was no longer the woman she had been. She was someone new, someone powerful, someone determined. And though the pack had retreated for now, Claire knew their fight was far from over. But as the baby inside her grew, so did her strength. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the future, for the legacy she would leave behind. One evening, as Claire stood outside, gazing up at the stars, she felt a deep sense of peace. The past was behind her, and though the future was uncertain, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered to the night. Not anymore. Time passed slowly in the weeks after Claire's victory. The tension in the air had begun to dissipate, but the scars of the past still lingered, though they were becoming more distant memories. The pack had scattered, the leader's retreat a reluctant concession, but Claire knew this wasn't the end. The peace that followed felt fragile, as though it could be shattered at any moment. As the days stretched into weeks, Claire had begun to accept her new life, growing into the role that had been thrust upon her. The world outside her cottage was peaceful, too peaceful, at times. Yet, as she sat in the soft glow of the morning light, her hand resting on her stomach, she could sense the storm building in the distance. The quiet was deceptive. There was still much to be done, much to be confronted. Her baby stirred inside her, as though sensing her thoughts. "I will protect you," she whispered to herself, and to the child growing within her. The storm was coming, but Claire was no longer afraid. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Liam entered the cottage with a look of concern etched on his face. He didn't say anything at first, but the tension between them was palpable. Claire could feel the weight of his silence. She had been wondering if and when he would bring it up. Pack may have retreated, but the danger they represented hadn't disappeared. "It's time," Liam finally said, breaking the silence. "We can't keep hiding here, Claire. The pack may have withdrawn for now, but they will come back. You know this." Claire's heart clenched at his words. She had known this was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to face. "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "But I won't run anymore. Not from them, not from the power inside me." Liam's gaze softened, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. "Then we face them together, for good or ill." Claire nodded, determination setting in. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment they would no longer be passive participants in their fate. The following days were filled with preparations. Liam and Claire had set out to gather allies, those they could trust, those who understood the true stakes. But even as they moved forward, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The silence from the pack was unnerving, a calm before the storm. Her thoughts were often consumed by the uncertainty of what was coming, and she found herself staring out at the horizon, wondering if the choices she had made would be enough to protect her child. "I have the strength," she reminded herself, feeling the stirrings of power inside her. But the more she prepared, the more the weight of the world pressed down on her. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about legacy. Her child would one day inherit this battle. As she walked alongside Liam one evening, the weight of their situation felt heavier than ever. He turned to her, his voice low. "We're ready, Claire. We have everything we need." But even as he said it, Claire knew this was far from over. The final test was yet to come. The night before the battle, Claire lay in bed, her mind racing. The room was silent, save for the occasional rustling of the wind outside. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling the tiny movements of her child. The baby had been more active lately, as though sensing the storm approaching. "Please be safe," she thought, her heart aching with the weight of her responsibility. She had known from the moment she discovered the power within her that there would be consequences. She had known that she would have to face this fight, not just for herself, but for the future she wanted to build for her child. But the fear lingered. What if they didn't win? What if the pack came for them again, stronger than before? The questions circled in her mind, but the one thing she knew for sure was that she would not back down. She had already made her choice. She would fight for herself, for Liam, and for the future she was creating. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready. At dawn, Claire and Liam stood at the edge of the forest, watching the first rays of light break through the trees. The battle ahead would be their final stand. The pack would either fall, or they would be consumed by it. There was no middle ground. As they stood there together, Liam reached for Claire's hand. "Whatever happens, we've already won," he said softly. Claire turned to him, her face calm and determined. "Not yet," she replied, her voice steady. "But we will." She squeezed his hand, feeling the power of their unity. It was the first time since all of this had begun that she felt completely certain. They had each other, and no matter what the pack threw at them, they would face it together. Claire looked out at the horizon one last time, a quiet sense of peace settling over her. "This is our fight. And we will win," she thought, her heart filled with quiet strength and unwavering resolve. The storm was coming, but Claire was ready. They both were.